Philosophical, okay, let's go to question 15 real quick and then we'll, this came up in some interesting discussion. And I don't know if I messed up, gave you 14 was a repeat of some other question. If you got confused, it's okay, I didn't. 15, obviously there's this little thing that Blackstone was talking about, municipal law. There's revealed law, comes in the Bible. First 10 commandments, we know, right and wrong. That's government structure there, theocracy. Then you have natural law. It's like right and wrong, basic right and wrong. God has put it in our very being to understand right and wrong. Even in Romans chapter 1, it talks about there's certain things we see in nature so that we're without excuse. So there's God's revealed law, natural law. Then there's municipal law. So in the municipal law, he said that there's this element of non-guilt possible. Now, how's that? So it's a little philosophical thing that the founders were looking at, municipal law compared to these other laws, these higher laws, and whether or not you could do something wrong on purpose. So that's kind of scary. Well, okay, well that's a nice thing you have to say, Blackstone. What's the Bible say? Okay, so that's what it was. It was kind of an obscure thing where at first you say, you know, the question essentially was, did not make the transgression a moral offense. The only obligation in conscience is to submit to the penalty of levy. Now, what did I ask you to say?
You asked us to explain what he meant by that.
Yeah, okay, so we'll start there.
Is this question 14?
15, the last one. Or 14, yeah. It's
Yeah,
15A or something like that.
15A, and then there's
Yeah.
15B.
So who would like to tell me what that means? I think I just did. What?
He states that the law is most compulsive when it says you can, but you will be punished if, and this is a very big if the person in charge decides to punish you. Therefore, if your connections were good enough, then you could supposedly escape punishment.
Ah, now that would be the claim of being in the bourgeoisie class. So you've got friends in the right places, they let you off the hook. Is that what you're implying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's something.
Because that was a possible branch of what he said.
Oh, well, that's something to think about in a depraved perspective. But thank you for sharing that. Matthew.
I thought he said that.
And that's going to come up today in the communism discussion.
A legislative law makes it to where only people who meet certain standards can do whatever the legislative law is legislating. And if you're not qualified to do whatever, you're obligated by your conscience to
Okay.
submit to a penalty.
Now, what's neat about this, I kind of was messing with your head. Christian gave an implication. So you went on to be what the implications might be of it. Really?
Well, that's what you said. You said explain the implications in
Yes.
the question.
Okay, so I was actually right now was asking about 15A. You showed the implications also. So let's step back just a minute so we put all this in context. And again, this is a big philosophical thing. This is a review, just stick with us. 15A, who wanted to explain in 15A what they meant? What did Blackstone mean? We're gonna try somebody else.
He said,
Wait, we're gonna try somebody else. Oh, what?
the question is to explain the implications
Okay.
in 15A. That's
Oh,
the
is it?
question. Yes.
I'm
explain
glad
the
you read my
implications.
instructions. Okay, get my dunce cap. In reading, explain the implications. Oh, okay, you're right, B is principles. So you, stupid, I'm so. Okay, you explain the implication. The implications, let me step back. I think I explained what it was, where basically he said that with civil law, if you read through his whole explanation, it really only applies to those in that society. That's why you've heard the term diplomatic immunity. Somebody comes, they're forced to be here by King whoever of Norway, and they come as a diplomat. Well, they're not here voluntarily. They're being forced here because of this diplomatic treaty and everything like that, and his king back home sent him here. He's not subject to the civil law, the municipal law that we as a commonwealth have determined are our rules of society. He is subject to the 10 Commandments. You know, he is subject to those absolute wrongs, like it's absolutely wrong to murder. You know, so I think, you know, those issues of diplomatic immunity, by treaty, sometimes they get away with the diplomatic immunity that if they didn't have some treaty, they would be held accountable for murder even if they're here against their will, because it's an absolute wrong. Is indifferent to, Blackstone used those terms. If he's indifferent to something, we're gonna figure out what the speed limit is gonna be in neighborhoods. It could be 15 miles an hour, it could be 18 miles an hour, it could be 25 miles an hour, right? As we all agree to that, and then some foreigner doesn't, hopefully we posted it, so even the foreigner who would like to enjoy company with all his neighbors or that are going down that street would observe the rule, and I'll get to you, Hunter, in a second. I mean, it's good to post it, but they really are not under the obligation, if they're foreigners, technically, in our law, in our system of law, they're technically not subject to showing up in district court if they go 22 miles an hour in an 18 mile an hour zone. It comes a little bit different when they start exceeding, what do they call it, 15 miles an hour. It's now reckless.
Yeah.
Well, now you're actually attacking everybody on the street with your automobile. It shifts, it's reckless. It's now in a misdemeanor category. Okay, it's actually, there's a little bit different. So there is a place where with what he's saying in the principle of our American law, that, and what I wanted to show you is that it's really our government, and our civil government is designed around a principle of being in community. And that those in community make the laws for the community. At the time, there were people who had given a vow of poverty, and they were like a priest for the Catholic Church. Is technically not in the community. He's actually separate from the community. He's actually living in a separate law. He's under canon law. He's under the law of the Roman Church, technically. I mean, there's these weird little things that modern America doesn't understand, but when the founders walked into this country and created this country, these things they were very conscious of these weird little separations of authority, boundaries of authority. Okay? So what was your question, Hunter?
It wasn't really a question, it was just what I had written down about it. I've really looked at, now this prohibitory law does not make the transgression a moral offense. The only obligation in conscience is to submit to the penalty if levied. So going back to your thing about the stop signs and obeying traffic laws, the traffic laws, if you disobey the traffic laws, it's not a moral offense, it's an offense against the people around you, and you're only obligated to pay the appropriate penalty that has been set up. It's not a sin against God, it's a offense against other people that have set up the traffic signs for their safety and for your safety.
Right. Now, technically, that's exactly what it implies. That means it's paying a tax. I did the speeding tax. Am I telling you to speed? No. Observe the law, because what we're going to go next is, what does the Bible say that our obligation is? God's laws are all higher than our laws. There are certain things he's not indifferent to. Okay? So the example would be, now a lot of people talk about immigration, and this is something where, oh, these guys, why aren't they kicking everybody out of the country? Read the law. It's a $50 fine. It's an infraction. It's like speeding. I've actually read the silly statute because I had to talk about it one time. Well, let me go do the homework. What's it actually say? It's a $50 fine. Now, of course, come across the border, show them you've got all your shots. If you don't have all your shots, get your shots. There's certain freedoms that particularly people on our borders have to actually get into the country very easily. There's just a procedure to do it. But they're still under the same mandate of subduing the earth. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. The more we sin, we're going to have more problems like this. The more righteous we are, you know what we're going to be doing? Influencing other countries. Okay, we're going to be encroaching on their borders, bringing righteousness. So, I mean, there's this. So, I say that to say, I'll give you an example. Something came up in the news this week. Anybody hear about the lady who got pulled over by the policeman?
I did.
And what happened? And she had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
What happened?
he pulled her out of her car, didn't he?
He pulled her out of her car. Okay. Now, what it did is, I had just read this Blackstone thing. So now I'm thinking, well, actually, you know what the fine is for not showing your driver's license? I mean, this was a few years ago. Like, I know it was in Tennessee. It was $15. $15. In other words, I don't have it with me today, officer. Okay, I can give you a summons of $15, or you can just say, you know what, just have a nice day and remember to bring your driver's license next time. But what happened was, there's a law that says if you do something wrong in America, and the Supreme Court's looked at this, if you've done something wrong, a policeman can ask you to identify yourself. If you're walking down the street, they're not supposed to ask you anything. Well, they can, and you can say, no, sir, trying to preserve our freedom, I'm not gonna answer that question unless you suspect me of a crime or something like that. You know, I mean, it sounds like you're being an upstart, but there's that balance of making sure that all of a sudden the police state doesn't start harassing everybody because of their color or their whatever, you know? So, but if you've done something wrong or you look like somebody's done something wrong, he can say, please identify yourself. Doesn't mean you have to show him identification. You have to say, I'm so-and-so from here. This is who I am from here. So it turns out, because she got pulled over, there's a law that she's supposed to identify herself. Well, it got really crazy. What happened? He wanted to know her papers. Show me your papers. Give me your driver's license. Give me your insurance. And she's going, officer, I have to get to the bathroom. I have a kidney infection, and you've got to get me to the bathroom. I don't know if she said that, but there was this thing, and all of a sudden this issue pops up. There's these different principles of law in government, and what's the responsibility of government. And she said, I basically have a medical issue that I can take off in the next few minutes if you let me. Okay, so that was something that was raised. And he goes, give me your driver's license and your insurance. She starts arguing with him. He arrests her, pulls her out of the car. Now, calm down a little bit, everybody. It's a $15 fine for not showing her license. He didn't ask her to identify herself. She might have said, I'm Mary Smith from right around the corner. Could you please let me go to the bathroom, and then I'll fill out the form, you know? I mean, there's other things that could have happened if you step back and think about what the founders understood the principle and purpose for government was. The purpose of government was to protect your life, including your kidney problems, your liberty, yes, freedom to come and go on the highway to certain regulations, standards, because of safety, you go to the bathroom, and your property. You certainly have a property right in your body. You do. It came up in the Supreme Court a few times in some infamous cases. So what happens, instead of protecting life, liberty, and property as the ultimate goal, I mean, knowing this, as a policeman, I would have said, let me escort you to this restroom down the street, and when you come out, I'll give you your summons for your speeding. And you can tell the judge, I had to go to the bathroom. And then it's in the judge's hands. But no, you give me your papers, you know, or I'm gonna put you in jail. Okay, so everybody thought, now this is not supposed to be a police state. Okay, so we're gonna look at some of these answers here to find out about what the purpose of government is. These are the reason I'm bringing this up here is because our country, and we're gonna talk next about communism, our country is going down the tubes really fast. There's things that are going wrong, and the way we know is by, like Josiah did, he dusted off the books, he went back and read the stuff, and goes, wait a minute, we're not doing this. This is the charter. This is showing us, this is the chart for our success. This is going to help us navigate into success, into peace in our society and safety and all those things, keep us from having crazy mob riots on the streets. You know, all those kind of things are, if it's kind of captured in the Constitution, it's captured in the laws of the various states in the Union, and the more we start to go off of it, the worse things are going to get. The problem is we're not sitting back and finding out what is the fundamental behind it. What is the plan of God? So the last thing I'm going to talk about on number 15 is what's the Bible saying? If this implies that there's rules, and again, I'm not saying go out and speed. I will tell you in California, there's this common law thing, there's 55 miles an hour. If the flow of traffic in California is going 70, and you're tooling along at 55, you better get off the road or be ready to pay the fine, because the policeman will pull you over for impeding traffic. But the sign said 55. Yes, but all your neighbors were going 70, and you were actually a hazard. So it depends, and that's in the common, like it's a common law feature that overrides the municipal law in California. So, but that's the culture I grew up in, and that's the situation. In Virginia, it kind of happens, but when it comes down to it, nobody's going to pull you over for going 55 when everybody else is going 70. They might not pull over anybody else, you know, they might pull over somebody going 80, but, so what I'm saying is not to, the goal is to observe, know why you're observing the signs. For one, we're gonna talk about that biblically. Why would I observe the signs? Because I know, well, it's a matter of as long as I'm not being reckless, I could pay the speeding tax. And my conscience is clear, I've stimulated the state's economy with my court fee and the $50 fine. You know what I mean? So there's benefits to the community when they pull me over. I don't know, you can think of it that way, okay? But, what does the Bible say? What do you think? And I need a girl to talk. Anybody know what the Bible would say? When I'm deciding, before I call on Courtney, somebody say Courtney. What would the Bible say when I'm contemplating how fast I should go on a given situation? See, these guys are chomping at the bit.
You're talking about our answers for.
I'm talking about if you're going, if I'm deciding, oh, I've got to go to the bathroom really bad, I use that example, and it's a 55-mile-an-hour zone, and let's just say everybody's going 55. And I know, well, I could probably get away with 57.5 or 62.5 right now, and I'll be going faster than everybody else, and I might pay a fine of $30 court fees plus $65, and then $7.50 for every mile over the speed limit. And you come up and say, well, I'm willing to pay that fine. When you're sitting there driving in your car and all those things come into your mind, what should you consider biblically?
Render what to Caesar's is Caesar.
Okay, render unto Caesar's that which is Caesar's. Blackstone would say that Caesar will allow you to pay a tax and you'll still be holy. Okay, what else?
Respect the laws, the government officials,
Okay,
for their powers from God.
Romans chapter 13. Okay, so for the benefit of, so now we're getting more and more weight, and this isn't situational ethics, it's what does the Word of God say? What else does the Word of God say? I know some of the parents are chomping at the bit right now. Parents, you guys got any ideas what the Bible might say on that?
I would assume that you come under the authority, you
Yeah.
know.
Well,
God
there's,
has put government in authority.
yeah,
They've come up with these rules, no matter whether I feel like that they're random or not. I'm under that authority.
Yes.
And so I have to abide by the rules, or
Okay.
I would assume it was sin.
okay. Now, here's other principles, those issues about let not your good deeds being spoken evil of, and I don't have that quoted off the top of my head, but there's a lot of things that the Bible has said that motivate us to go ahead and obey the sign. And it is submitting to the authority appointed over you, because they do not bear the sword in vain. But Blackstone would say that they're doing it partly to raise revenue. Okay, go ahead.
Alright, well, I thought about something about the, what ought to be considered. In 1 Corinthians, it's talking about how, it might not cause you to sin, but it might cause someone else who looks at your deeds to fall into sin, and that would be sin for you to do the thing. Whether it would cause you to sin or not, it
Yes.
still would shine badly on, Christ, whom we're supposed to be representing.
Very good.
And it would cause other people who might not be in the faith or not, if they see you driving down the highway at 80 miles an hour and it's 70, they're going to be like, well, I go to church with that person and he's speeding.
Okay.
I wonder what other laws he's breaking.
Very good. And there's a couple other things. Isaac said this after the class 2 weeks ago. He said, you know what? He says, really, if you look at it, government's for the evil people. Because those people who are righteous are going to do the right thing. And they're not going to have any need for government. They'll be angels. They'll be men that are angels, effectively, mankind. So it's really for the pagan. It's those who have to have some outside motivator to do the right thing. These motivations of punishment. Men are evil. That's why we have these rules. We can't trust them to leave it to themselves at what speed they're going to go to, because we've got enough knuckleheads out there that a lot of people are going to have a lot of property damage. It's just the nature of man. So let's regulate the speed on the highway. Now, what Hunter brought up was this, there's a lot more to this than just whether I'm going to pay a tax or not. The pagan can worry about the tax. The pagan can worry about whether or not it's right or wrong. I have a higher thing. If I have a little fish on my bumper sticker, you know, I'm gonna be, what am I communicating, you know? That's why I don't have permission to give road rage. I mean, there's a lot of things. So, again, I took a lot of time on that. It comes back to, and you're gonna say, wow, we're going over this one area so much. Well, it is. It's gonna change a little bit, because from now on, we're gonna be really talking about US government and the government structure we have and things like that. And I really, the whole point of reading this Blackstone stuff and answering those questions was to get an idea of what those who wrote the frame of government were thinking. You're seeing the things that you're gonna show up in the Declaration of Independence, you're gonna see it in the Virginia Constitution, you're gonna see stuff in there and you're gonna go, wow, look at this little line, Article 1, Section 12, the Virginia Article 4, Section 12, Virginia Constitution. Man, Blackstone said something about that. I know why that's in that Constitution that way. I get it. You know, you'll get it. If there's judges that haven't read Blackstone, then you'll get it better than they do. Okay? And you might have to go to the Supreme Court before anybody notices you're right, but that's another thing. Now, so you guys did your Blackstone. Thank you for doing that. Do you have any other questions? All right. So in government, that's American government. Now we're going to talk about things that are, your thing today was communism. We don't have a laptop. I was going to show you a 5-minute, I'll get you Christian, 5-minute video. The Bloody History of Communism. It's on YouTube. It's 14 parts.
I have my laptop right at home.
That's too late because I goofed off. Sorry. But number 12, this guy, if you look at the person's email that put it's JW, is like the email name on the YouTube thing. Bloody History of Communists. It was section 12 of 14, starting about 3 minutes and 40 seconds into it. It showed in 1967, and I think it was Christian, I'm going to have to respond to your hand there. In 1967, there's this thing where Chairman Mao, the leader of the Communist Party in China, inspired all the people to have an uprising. Isn't that something? The guy in charge of government inspires his Red Army, his People's Army, to rise up and just start disrupting everything. Okay, and do things according to his little red book that he wrote that was based on Leninism and Marxism. And I was going to show you this video showing why would somebody in leading a government be excited about an uprising? What would motivate, even the guy in his own country, what would motivate him for an uprising? Have you seen anything in the news in the last 3 years about uprisings? Libya, Egypt, Syria, not Saudi. They tried. Bahrain, there was a little bit. Tunisia. There's probably a few other ones in there.
A little bit of Israel.
Hey, that's the ongoing conflict. But yes, those specifically. And this has been celebrated. In fact, we probably had little drone guys flying an airplane making sure that Gaddafi didn't get out of town. That's what it was, Gaddafi. Getting out of town, right? There's a lot of, why is the U.S. government even affirming and so excited about what is a lawless, really, in Egypt, they have elections coming up, but they're excited about people destroying property, and getting there and burning down buildings, and communicating their voices. Why is any government excited about that? In fact, Mubarak was our buddy. Gaddafi in September 2008 became our buddy officially. It wasn't in the U.S. news, it was showing up in the news overseas, but we were making deals with Gaddafi. So why would somebody get so excited about complete anarchy? Why would Mao get excited about complete anarchy? What's your question or comment?
Well, my original comment was when we
Okay.
read the communism thing in our book, it was very depressing.
Yes, it was. Were they lying to you?
No,
How do you know?
because we've studied this stuff in history and
Have you?
it all backs up.
How many people have read, What's this? Manifesto of the Communist Party. Has anybody read this?
That's next year.
Is it? I'm sorry. I'm gonna see some excerpts out of this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read some things
Not
between
read the
now.
whole thing next year.
Yeah, not the whole
Just
thing,
read
not the whole
excerpts.
thing. But what's good about it is the things that we talked about today, what you're gonna need to do next year is go through this thing with critical thinking. Because what's happening is, you're seeing communism, the fruit of communism. Communism especially is targeting you as a home schooler. You are in the crosshairs of the communists. You know how I knew? I just read it, right here in the Communist Manifesto, bless their heart. So I'm gonna read a few things here. Okay, communism, they talked about it being a class struggle. You know, the whole purpose was to look at the bourgeoisie, who are the guys who have stuff. Bill Gates would be bourgeoisie. Okay? Now everybody else who's not a property owner, is not insanely wealthy, is essentially the oppressed proletariat. Now, it's very much class struggle and highlighting a class conflict is part of the purpose of the communists. It's the impetus, but to make the excuse or justification for the institution of communism. What they say is, let's say we, as the poor guy proletariat, are oppressed by the bourgeoisie who have lots of money. So it's imperative for us, don't do it the lawful way. Don't get together and communicate and influence and vote somebody into the legislature and influence the legislature to change the law to fix the problem. It is to take over violently. Okay? And then once you do take over violently, then you have to very deliberately and meanly and almost like a criminal behavior, go steal property. That's not just land, that's stuff. Be very oppressive on the bourgeoisie. Now, how do I know? I just read this here. So here Marx says, society as a whole is more and more splitting up into two great hostile camps, into two great classes facing each other, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Okay, class warfare, covered it. Here's another quote. The executive of the modern state is but a committee for managing the common affairs of the whole bourgeoisie. Now, what I want to do is, I've written here that I'm supposed to read all three of these paragraphs, and I want to talk about it. The bourgeoisie, when he gets the upper hand, pittily tears asunder the feudal ties that bound man to his natural superiors, has left no nexus between man and man, the naked self-interest and callous cash payment. Now, they're making this claim that the bad guys, we'll use Bill Gates as an example. Okay, Bill Gates and somebody...
Steve Jobs. He's dead.
Yeah, we'll say Bill Gates and Governor McDonald, in partnership, just somebody who we know. Okay. Okay, now listen to this. They have resolved personal worth into exchange value, and in place of the numberless, indefeasible chartered freedoms, they've set up free trade, in one word, for exploitation. Veiled by religious and political illusions, it has substituted naked, shameless, direct, brutal exploitation. Now, I want you to step back. If you do any study on the actual implementation of Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, communists, what they do, that's exactly what they do. And that's what's really crazy about it. They're saying this is the bad thing. And if you actually see what the regimes perform, because they do not believe in God, they believe in the state is their God. In fact, the Chinese officially, the state is their God. And I'm going to ask you a question that went back to Blackstone. The bourgeoisie has stripped of it has converted the physician, the lawyer, the priest, the poet, the man of science into its paid wage laborers. One of the things you're seeing right now in the news is, and I'll use the healthcare scheme just as an example, and I actually read the silly thing, which very few people in the planet have read.
It must have took a lot of time to
It
read
did,
that.
it did, and it's highlighted
So pages.
on my Adobe file. But one of the things you see is it's not like equality for all men, equal due process under law. It's basically to equalize everybody. So that would be the physician, the lawyer, the priest, the poet, the man of science, everybody into the same, actually demote them into blending, I guess to homogenize with the rest of society. The bourgeoisie has torn away from the family its sentimental veil and has reduced the family relation to mere money relation. Now, one of the things, and because we're limited in time, the thing that as I'm reading this Communist Manifesto and I'm identifying some things in there, they actually go and say, because this is already messed up by those rich guys, we're going to go ahead and do it, but for a good cause. We're going to take the same repressive measures, but for a good reason. To elevate, or at least actually to demote those who are exploiting us. So they will be demoted just like we are. It really never went into much about really elevating us in our situation. It actually admitted that it had no intention but to have everybody at the minimum wage level, because that way nobody would have any money to use as capital to exploit anybody else. So it's really weird, but it boldly says we're going to equalize everybody into just a big laboring machine. Everybody's equalized. Nobody has individual thought. Nobody can have religion, because you're not joining the machinery of production if you're out doing religious stuff. There won't be any priests. You know what I mean? So it actually describes this world where everybody is demoted into the same equal level. Now I have a question. In your handout, there was a word there, and it was actually, the answer was state. What did in the words so those who founded the nation and wrote the Constitution, they used the word state, the United States, the states, the people. What does state mean? What did those 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago understand as the word state? I want to get somebody in the back row, because Christian has got all the answers. He's going to get a name. What is the state?
Sort of like its own little country.
It is like
its own ruling, like it's in charge of itself.
But why? Based on the words that were used by Blackstone. Okay, Hunter, somebody in the back row. You guys are relying on Christian and Hunter and Isaac. Good. What is it? Yeah.
Well, what I would think would be a group of people with common interests and common areas that they live in, with come together to make a state where they can protect their interests, protect what they are doing, their lives, and live in a neighborhood and a state
Okay.
that is beneficial to all who are inside of the state.
Okay. Go ahead.
Number 12 is, a state is a collective body composed of a multitude of individuals united in their safety and convenience and intending to act together as one man.
Intending to act together in one man. So that in the theory of law, the philosophy of law, a state is, like Hunter said, acting as one man in law. Okay. In China, this was said, I've heard this even recently, that they're continuing to repeat this statement. Their God is the state. That everybody in their society is to worship the state. And they're looking at it as two things. Principally under communism, the state really is the proletariat mass, represented by that government head. So they're really, in communism, is to worship man. It's actually a manifestation of what Satan has been prodding men to do from the very beginning. Okay? So I'm running out of time here, but I'll go real quick. I'm going to go through the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, and you're going to get this again later. And the tough part is, because of time, I would have preferred to just read it right out, some of these things, some of these statements right out of here. But here we go. The proletariat will use its political supremacy to wrest by degree all capital from the rich guys, from Bill Gates, centralize all instruments of production in the hands of the state, few auto companies, of the proletariat organized as ruling class, increase the total productive forces as rapidly as possible. Turn us all into productive forces. That means wives especially. Everybody's a worker, by the way. Everybody is a worker. Nobody gets to homeschool their children. Okay? The state is responsible for your way of thinking. It takes a community, it takes the village to raise a child. Okay, of course, in the beginning, this cannot be effected except by means of despotic inroads on the rights of property. In other words, we're going to take over and be mean to Bill Gates. Okay, as an example. Now, and the reason I use him real quick, Bill Gates, I watched an interview with him and Steve Jobs that was done in 2005, and I found out, and I've heard in other ways, that Bill Gates has given away billions of dollars. He's actually gotten into some polio eradication thing in India where they had 1 case of polio last year in India. I mean, that's amazing. So yes, he gets all this money because he used the law to protect his copyright of his operating system. So he gets residual payments from every single computer that's bought that has anything to do with that operating system. But he's not going to die the richest man on the planet. He's actually using it, even though he's that bad bourgeoisie, to actually very deliberately love his neighbor. He's free to love his neighbor. Not, the collective is not going in mass route to Bill Gates and saying, give us your billions of dollars, you know, and we'll just burn it someplace, you know, in effigy,
We
whatever.
need money.
Right, so here's an example of, in a free society, that the communist state didn't come up with what Bill Gates came up with. You know what I mean? It didn't come up with what Steve Jobs came up with. They didn't, that perspective of lack of freedom, actually if you read the Communist Manifesto, it complains about all these improvements that have happened because of free thinkers and actors that have happened in the Western Christian world. Okay? So let's read just some of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. Abolition of property in land and application of all rents and land to public purposes. That's, everybody knows that. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax. We have it ourselves. Abolition of rights of inheritance. That's a big thing. Right now, if you die, there's a law, the federal tax, that would go in and take the property of your parents from them, rather than have it go to you. Now, I would love to teach a class on that, and the American government and law related to those boundaries that the founders created, that goes way beyond anything that was ever within their realm to do. But unless somebody brings it up, the Supreme Court's going to continue. Confiscation of the property of all immigrants and rebels, and they get to determine who is a rebel. Anybody who does not agree with this way of thinking will have everything taken from them. Centralization of credit in the banks of the state by means of a national bank with a state capital and exclusive monopoly. We're pretty close to that in America right now. Centralization of the means of communication and transport in the hands of the state. So when you see something happening where there's this class struggle or political struggle about control, centralized control, you got to stop back and think of this. Well, you have no authority to do that. It violates the Constitution. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's for the good cause. One thing about communism, you'll see, it ignores those supposed class barriers of law, those things that create the bourgeoisie and the proletariat class struggle is law. And this law has only come from those rich, mean people. Okay? No, law comes from God. These things, when people say, let's uphold the authority structure of law and the boundaries that were given by inspired people who had done their homework, what we're seeing right now is a lot of this, it doesn't matter what the law says. It doesn't matter what the Constitution says. And if you read the Communist Manifesto, you go, oh, I've read that before. I've seen that motive right here. So that's why I'm talking about this. All right, now I didn't care about this before. I really never cared about this until I went and read the dumb Constitution and the things that motivated it. Yes, and it's not a holy sacred object, so I can be facetious. Okay, I need page 21. We're going to wrap this up soon and very soon, because I have something I must do. Extension of factories and instruments of production owned by the state, bringing into cultivation in accordance with a common plan. In China, they tried this thing where they were going to make the seeds evolve to do better in cold temperatures. So they soaked it in water and almost froze it. And so and it was all going to go because of this theory. All of us are going to do one plan. Well, they all planted the seeds and they didn't grow because they just destroyed them in their little soaking and cooling program. And so there's a massive like depletion of the staple that they were using to eat as a nation. They actually had famine as a result because they all together as a nation did the same thing because they believed in evolution and they were going to like move evolution along. It's really stupid. Equal obligation of all to work. This is critical. That means you, your mother, your brother, your sister, nobody gets to stay at home and raise the family. Educate the children. And the old bourgeoisie way of thinking. Everybody is a worker. We see that now. And what's happening is the family and the country is disintegrating because, in fact, the very thing that the communists complain about are happening. Because now it used to be Beaver's dad, what's his name? We got Ward Cleaver would go off to work and he'd make enough money, make enough wage so that June would stay at home with the boys. And they could have a life, but now it's, we're gonna cut your pay in half, so that the only way you're gonna survive is to have June work at that same half wage, and you together will have just enough to get by and survive. Of course, you will never have enough money to oppress anybody else.
Is it the fact that they cut your wage in half, or is it the fact I want more things? And so, I want more things, I can't afford the new car, or the 92-inch TV unless Ward and June work.
Well,
And when you don't, all of us, every one of these families in this room have made sacrifices.
yes,
So mom could stay home.
right.
And so we didn't run out and get the new car when it came out, and we didn't, go on a vacation every summer. We didn't do these things because we chose to stay home and live under a budget of one income.
Well, I will tell you, your motivation to do that statistically, you actually now have to, let's say, tighten the belt more than you would have. Absolutely.
We're all aware of that.
Okay, let's go. Combination of agriculture. Oh, here we go. I'm going to go to the last one. Number 10. Free education for all children in public schools. Abolition of the children's factory labor in its present form. And I agreed with that. Combination of education with industrial production. The point is, and we're going to close here, communism is happening. This whole vision is happening before your very eyes. A celebration of anarchy and an uprising among the people who are completely lawless and don't have any idea what they might want to do to have a government that will stabilize their condition. There's nothing to celebrate. The whole thing in Egypt, the fact that they were demonstrating the way they were showed that they didn't know what they were doing. What is the fruit going to come if somebody is just completely acting in complete anarchy? That's what the communists believe, and if they've read, in fact, very important people in our government have read and idolized Mao's Red Book. Okay? So what you've got right now, guys, it's not a class struggle, it's not the capitalists against the communists. What it is a worldview of we're falling, Jesus has come, his blood is shed for our sin, and that we would confess him as Lord in our life, the Holy Spirit come live inside us, redeem our minds, redeem everything about us, and we begin to live, be the good guy who doesn't need policing by government. We're going to see the fruit of it in our families, in our community, in our very nation. And that's really what you're seeing. This whole communism is the result of complete abandonment of the principles of God, and in fact being at war with the very work of Jesus. So that's my theme today. And anybody got a question? Okay, Today I preached because it was very philosophical. Next week your assignment is in the book. It's real simple. It shouldn't be a big calorie burner. It's going to be quite a relief, I'm sure. And some of the things you're going to read will show some of the things you've read in the last couple of weeks.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
Since we are seeing this in our society, and we've been taught to recognize this, how would we combat it?
By speaking. Freedom of speech is important. Do a video on YouTube. No, really, communicate reasonable things. Don't argue on a pragmatic basis. I say argue on a biblical basis. And that's my word. That's what I'm doing. Everywhere I can is I take what I see and bring the Bible as a spotlight on it. And then just throw it out there. try to be salt and light. That's how you can influence people. Okay?
Well, in Mexico,
They want to argue with you, they'll have to read the Bible.
or Canada,
Thank you.
even Canada too.
Watch more movies.